Hello Steelers, and welcome to this tutorial video for these jungle terrain pieces that I recently upgraded from my old ones. I'd searched around online and I found Wylock's Armoury, who gave me the ideas for mine, albeit using slightly different materials. So all thanks to him anyway. Before anybody asks in the comments, the trees and shrubs came from eBay. They came from China, where I was able to buy them in multiple packs. I already had them shaded with Agrax Earthshade on the trunks, and I'd also dry brushed the fronds, and I'd done this in my earlier video for my Mark 1 versions of these pieces. There'll be a link in the description to this video so you can see how I did that. Alright, that's enough waffle from me, let's get on with the tutorial. I mounted my original jungle terrains on CDs and I wanted to reuse them, so I stripped off all the foliage and trees and other materials before proceeding. Obviously, here you can use what you like. If you want a more organic shape than a CD, I'd suggest using the corkboard that Wylock uses in his video. I used a hot glue gun to glue the CD to a piece of 5mm thick foam mounting board. And then I roughly cut it out and trimmed it down to shape. Using a sharp and long knife, I then cut a rough slope on the edge of the foam board. This doesn't have to be really neat, but just ensure that it's quite sloped so it's going to blend with your tabletop better. Then using my hands, I added polyfiller, or spackle as it's also known in the US, and I covered the base entirely, making sure to smooth out the slopes and the top so it looks like a small mound. Again, you don't really need to be too neat here, but this can be done pretty quick and pretty easily. Then just leave the whole thing to dry. I'd suggest giving it overnight just to be doubly sure that the entire polyfiller has dried up. Now you could ignore the next few steps and just add a textured and coloured paste instead of the polyfiller to speed things up, but I recommend that you don't. This is because adding more layers to the base will make it more resilient and also tougher for your gaming conditions. This also includes moving them about and storage, but of course it's entirely up to you. With the polyfiller dry, I used undiluted PVA white glue painted over the top of the polyfiller and then sprinkled fine sand over that. This is children's playground sand, but any will do. Just shake off the excess and then leave the base to dry once again. When the glue and the sand covering has dried, I began painting the base. Here I'm just using a cheap artist's acrylic, and you can get these in any artist supply shops for pennies, and it's just more efficient than using your normal hobby paints. This is burnt umber, but use whatever you want to get the effect of the ground conditions where your games are set. I'm going to be using these jungle pieces in the Far East in World War II, but they can easily work on any number of theatres or any number of planets. Next I'll dry brush with fawn. This just brings out the rough sand and also gives the colour a bit of depth. Again, you could leave this step out, but if you only want to make small patches of leaf fall in the next stage, then I'd recommend doing this, as this layer will be prominent on the base. It doesn't take very long anyway. And then we turn our attention to the leaf fall and also the jungle floor. For this, I bought some oregano, parsley and mixed Italian herbs from my local supermarket and mixed them all together in a tub. Using undiluted PVA glue, I cover the base and spread it out using a brush, and then sprinkle this herb mix over the top. I'm imagining I'm making a pizza. This is the point that you might only want to make small patches of leaf fall, but I went over the entire base, making the latter stage slightly redundant, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do at that point anyway. Then we need to seal the herbs in place. I watered down some PVA in a separate container with a ratio of about 50-50 water to glue. I was going to spray this over the base, but my spray had become blocked, so I had to use a pipette to draw up the solution and squirt it over the base and herbs. This has a double effect of not only sealing the herbs in place, but it also reduces the smell of the oregano, which is quite strong. Definitely leave this overnight, and then if you want to, give it another dose for the next day for double measures, and you'll find it sets really hard. So we've almost finished the base at this point, and the last couple of stages really depend on how you want your base to look. First of all, I washed diluted flat earth by Vallejo over the entire base. This has the effect of bringing all the colours together and making it look more like a natural forest floor than just some herbs on a base. Also, herbs will lose their colour over time, so here we are artificially retaining that with the wash. As this was jungle, I went for a green dry brush over the top of the herbs once the ink wash was dry. If I was doing a forest, I'd probably go with a brownish colour, but again the colour is entirely up to you and where your jungles are located. And then the last stage for the base was just to give it a very final dry brush of yellow, This is just to bring out the tips of the herbs and also just add another layer of interest to the overall piece. Now it was time to start decorating the base with the trees and bushes. My original bases suffered from being too flat, so the trees and bushes would break off and I needed some depth to hold them in place, and this is the reason for making these bases. I cut the ends of the tree trunks into a rough point using a sharp knife so they would go into the base easier, and then taking a sharp pointed tool, this is just a file but it was perfect for the job, I pierced through the base. And this is where the CD comes into play, as it was solid enough to stop me going all the way through the base with the point. I then made the hole slightly larger with the file end, blew out the debris in there, and using super glue fixed the tree into the hole. You could use hot glue here as well, but I found working with the super glue was quick and painless. Once I had put in as many trees as I wanted on the base, I then turned to the smaller bushes. These are aquarium plants, they're snipped down to size. You'll get these on eBay amongst other places. I made a small hole with a sharp file and then just super glued these into place wherever I wanted them. I then added some larger leafy bushes as well. These were more aquarium plants. These were just super glued to the base. These are perhaps the most fragile items of this build, so it may have been better to hot glue them in, but I'm going to see how they handle in gameplay and then maybe come back later and do that. And then it was the final stage of adding a few details here and there. I bought a tub of grass tufts off eBay and turned to these for this stage. I even added some into the aquarium plants where you could see obvious joins and mould lines, for example. I used a mix of colours again just to give the base some points of interest. And then that was it, they were completed. I did a few at a time to ensure I didn't take too long, and I was able to knock these out in just over a week. I've got some plans to make some low-lying jungle terrain pieces as table filler using similar techniques, but for now these are going to work just fine. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's given you some inspiration to try these out yourself. I'm glad I went back and revisited my own jungle pieces, as I think these are definitely a step up from the originals. If you've enjoyed the video, please give me a like and drop a comment below. Also, please check out my Patreon and Ko-fi if you want to help support the channel. And don't forget you can also become a channel member, all of which helps keep the lights on at Steel Towers. And I will see you in the next video.